Hi everyone. This is part one of the Foliage demo. Uh, some of you have already seen part two. I just kind of recorded it out of sync. So this is part one. Um, just a brief disclaimer at the front of this project. This is for intermediate to advanced users. Um, and I'll be showing a method that I was shown by Jeremy Huxley of Naughty Dog. Um, That's how I learned this, and I'm passing it on to you. So basically, we're going to build out uh, our geometry. So these leaves here, we're going to do some color on them. And these won't be a one-to-one match because most foliage isn't because it's just too detailed. You could always take this method and go further with it if you want to. So let's go ahead and get started. So we've got ZBrush open here. I've got a reference image just sitting back here with Spotlight. If you don't want Spotlight, you can turn it on and off. You can always keep your reference off to the side if you want. And I'll probably just keep this reference up long enough to block in our shape, and that'll be about it. So, and I've got a sphere loaded in here as well. So I'm going to go ahead and make this a polymesh 3D. Put on a geometry, turn it into a dynamesh. That's pretty high, so let's lower this down. We'll just say 64 as far as the resolution of the dynamesh. Let's turn that on, turn it back on. Let's go down to 80. Still a bit high, so let's just see what we get. I always turn the mat cap to gray as well. Go into edit mode. I'm going to turn off the spotlight for a minute just so we can get this straightened out. And zoom, make this actual. Sometimes you just have to do something to the mesh. So 17,000, that's about right. That's probably enough to get started anyways. So let's turn the spotlight back on. And I'm going to move this off to the side just for now. Scale it, kind of push it over here. And I'm just going to match this one shape on the on the right hand side. So here's our sphere, and we're just going to hit BMV for the move brush. I'm just going to kind of line this up over here. And I'm just going to match the profile for now. I'm not worried about like how the object looks or anything. And I'm going to start blocking this in. And you can always block this in using any method you want. This early kind of stage stuff, it really doesn't matter how you get there, it's just as long as you get there. And I'm not really worried about the whole sphere. As you can see, it's going to be kind of messed up back here, so I'm just going to delete all of this. And just do a delete hidden, and go ahead and remesh. Stick it back over there. So there's that. I'm going to go ahead and just flatten it up. Oops, don't want to do that. Flatten it this way. And remesh again. Kind of push it back in here. And I'm just going to start smoothing some of this. You can see just with that initial smooth, we're getting more of the shape that we want. So let's go back over here and just refine this a bit. It looks about right. So let's go into our spotlight and scale it up, move it. Let's get some of the details in here. And for those that don't know, to get the smooth brush, I'm just hitting Shift. So that's our overall blocked in shape. And that looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this off. I'm going to up a resolution just a little bit. Let's just say 152. So now we're at 9,000. That's good. So now I'm going to start looking at the reference off to the side and just continue blocking this out, smoothing it up. And I know there's going to be that center vein that runs down the middle, so let's just switch to the damn standard brush. And I've got my lazy mouse on. Let's turn the step down and then the radius up. And let's take the Z intensity down as well. And just kind of eyeball a center line. Sometimes this takes a couple tries. Just literally trying to keep the line as straight as you possibly can. And that's good enough. Another way we can get this line is if we just mask it. And to mask something like this, we'll probably need a little bit more resolution. So let's jump up again. That should be enough. Mask brush. Let's make sure lazy mouse is still on. Make it a small draw size. I'm just going to mask this. And this doesn't have to be as close as that little vein that we just did, because we're gonna blur this out a bit. Like so. And I can tell like our leaf is kind of bumpy, so let's go ahead and fix that while we're at it. Let's use the trim rectangle. Let's just trim this. Go the other way. Nope, maybe this way. There. So now it's pretty flat. And it screwed us up a little bit, but that's okay. I might do that after this bend. Now let's go ahead and just do it now. So what I'm going to do now is just use the move brush and just kind of bend the leaf into its position like so. And you can do this with deformers, obviously. I find that if you hand do it, you do get a better look overall. Just depends on how much time you have, really. All right, I think that's gonna work. So let's go ahead and just smooth this. Better clear my mask. Smooth this down. And one thing to remember with all these leaves and plants and stuff, this is a work. It does take a little bit of time for it to look nice. So try not to get disappointed or give up. So now I'm just going to use a trim dynamic brush to flatten out the top of this a bit. It's too lumpy. I'm doing this instead of trying to use the trim brushes. Again, this is another way to manually do it where the look is, it just adds noise into your plant, which makes it more realistic. So I think that should do it. And then I'm just going to smooth those back out. Yeah, we're getting there. Not worried too much about the back, but let's just go ahead and, just to be clean about it, let's go ahead and clean this back up too. There we go. That's looking good. Another thing you can do, we're going to be extrapolating this into a normal map, so we don't have to be too crazy as far as the profile. Because like this is a bit thicker than what we're trying for. If it bothers you, you can always just scale it, make it flatter. And that works. For me, I'm just going to go through some of these edges. They're a little bit too wonky. Move brush. Go ahead and move that back out. And this vein in the middle is still too big, so let's just pinch it. I'm going to use the pinch brush, and I'm just going to go right down the center and just pinch this together. That works for me. Sometimes you do get these kind of stems that run through here, and I typically don't put them in, but you can. I find that the extra geometry, the extra look doesn't really do too much for you, especially in foliage. It's not really that big of a deal. You could always put a cylinder in there if you wanted to. So next thing I'm going to do is basically draw a mask. And I may time lapse this, but I'm going to use a damn standard brush. I'm going to turn this lazy mouse way up. And basically all I'm going to do now is these little ridges in here. I'm just going to freehand them. You can do this procedurally with like nano mesh or something like that. But again, depends on how much detail and how accurate you really need to be, and typically you don't. I might switch this up, make masking a little bit easier. Maybe not. That's not going to help. Yeah, there we go. It's just trying to find this center line here. Okay. Come on, work with me, Zbrush. All right, cool. I'm just gonna correct this while I'm working here, just to move this around just a little bit. Okay, I think that works. So let's go back to the damn standard, and we're gonna mask. I guess it doesn't matter if we're in damn standard or not. Go freehand with no alpha and make a really small brush size. And let's go to our stroke for the mask tool. And let's turn lazy mouse on. Radius up. There we go. Okay, so when I do with the mask, you can kind of see these edges in there. So I know that this object definitely is not high res enough to mask this off. So we're at 79,000. Let's go ahead and just go up a bit. And all I'm doing with this is increasing the Dynamesh and then just clicking and dragging the mask, and that adds more geometry. Looks like we got some problems down here. Let's just fix those. So this is a common issue that happens when dynameshing. Um, Basically, all you have to do is just inflate this area with the inflate brush, like so, and then redynamesh and smooth. Redynamesh and smooth. All right. So let's just get rid of that. Smooth it back out. Ooh, too strong. Again, I'm not being too precious with any of this stuff. Um, if anything, being a little bit sloppy helps with plants. There we go. All right, so let's go back to our mask and start drawing these out. One thing I always suggest, too big. There we go. So I typically try to do this from the outside in because the pen pressure works for you that way. You don't have to kind of battle it because these leaves, if you look at them, they do fade as they get closer to the edge. So I'm just using that for us here. So I'm just going to go through and mask these out. And I'm just looking at the reference. Again, I'm not being super careful with this. But really, it's all just kind of about applying what you're going to do or what the leaf actually looks like. So I notice as this goes up, it kind of starts to fold in on itself, and these lines get a little bit closer, and they start to angle. Again, I'm just doing this as fast as I can. You can obviously spend much more time on this if you're doing a production asset or something for your own project. Like so, and we're going to do the opposite side. So basically, it's going to be offset a bit from our other ones, from the other side. Kind of want to match the same look as much as we can. Another way you can do this is with array mesh. I've been experimenting with that, and I think I have a method that works pretty well. There's a new tool in Zbrush called the intersection masker. I just haven't got a chance to have it work consistently yet, so I'm just gonna hold off on showing that method until it's 100%, so you guys don't have to watch my Zbrush crash a million times. Oops. Go one more time. And then I'm just going to mask the center part as closely as I can. That's not a very good job. Let's go this direction. Let's go to there, and let's just finish this off. And that's good enough. So next thing I'll do, since you see there's a little bit of a spottiness in our mask, we're going to go ahead and sharpen that up. So let's go to our masking tools. And let's do a sharpen mask. Whoop, let's not do that. Let's blur it first. Well, let's grow it first, blur it, then sharpen it. That's not going to work either. Nope. grow, sharpen, nope. I guess we'll just use it as is, hope for the best. So I'm just going to invert the mask like so, and then brush, damn standard, and I'm just going to run it through this. Turn the intensity up a bit. All right, that's going to work for us. So again, just going back, starting on the outside, going in. This might seem like double work, but having this mask here really does help. So you don't kind of end up throwing deformation all the way through it. This definitely is a help. And if you don't believe me, you can give it a try doing it the other way without the mask and see what works best for you. Just going to go down this side. And we'll just keep going. Almost done. All right. So now let's go ahead and try to do this center line. This is going to be the hardest one by far, so let's see if we can get it done here. And I'm doing this center line a couple times because I keep smoothing it out and just adding back, smoothing it out, adding back. So just in case you're wondering what I'm doing. Cool. And there's our basic little indentations. You can always go back in here and just kind of connect some of these up. I try to do it in the same manner that I made them originally. It can be a little difficult. Let's turn our Z intensity down here. There we go. And I'm just kind of connecting these up, just Getting a little better look out of them. There we go. Whoops. See if I can do it just down here. There. It's good enough. Let's switch our matte cap back. Great. Looks good. So now let's go ahead and add a little bit of movement to these interior veins. So I'm just going to grab the move tool and we're just going to kind of move. Trying to create a little bit more of that illusion of the veins rising up. Don't want to do it too much, and I think I went way too far with that. There we go. Yeah, you have to be careful with this because you can start to get these kind of veins that start to look unnatural. It's always good to give this a little bit of a nudge up. All right, looks good to me. So next step, let's go ahead and start putting some color on this. You know what? Before I do that, let's just smooth the center vein out just a bit. And then, of course, doing that, we're going to mess up some of these little lines in here, so I'm just going to go back through and just touch them up. Most of this stuff you probably wouldn't see because there's that center stem area. So I'm not going to worry about it too much, but some of these are a little gnarly. So let's just connect them up in here. Yeah, that's good. And again, it's always nice to have some little pieces of variation that happen in here. We just don't want it to look computery. That's not really a word, but you guys know what I'm talking about. So I'm just going to mess around with these a little bit. Cool. Good enough. We won't even notice it when there's color on there. I do want to try one thing, just experiment. Let's try a clay polish, see how that works. Yeah, that works good. So you can see how that kind of tightened these veins up a little bit. Makes it more natural looking. That works. That looks nice. Okay, so color. Let's go ahead and click on so let's hit B, P, and then A, and that's our paintbrush. So let's go ahead and grab a green, relatively desaturated, kind of a little bit lighter, and maybe some more yellow in there. And I'm just looking at the reference to try to match this up. I think that's probably good. So let's hit color, fill object. We have poly paint on, which is good. So let's go ahead and go to our masking tab and do a mask by peaks and valleys, maybe. Nope. I have to experiment because I never remember the right one here. Nope, not that one. Cavity. There we go, cavity. So that does an automatic mask, and I can blur it a little bit. Just click that, and then if I invert that, we get the veins basically. And if you look at the reference, the veins have a little bit lighter of a green. So I'm just gonna grab this, bring it up, and I'm just gonna paint this in. And that's not too great. Let's see. Maybe a little bit lighter. Too light. Need some more color in there. Oh, getting there. Let's go a little bit lighter. And that should work. So obviously with this blur, I think I screwed that up a little bit. So let's just lower that back down. And we're still getting a little bit of a kind of a fuzz in there. So let's try a different one. Let's pull this down just a bit. No, that's not going to work. Nope. Let's try peaks and valleys. Again, let's bump the range up. Pull the coverage down. Oop, not that much. Starting to get there. So I guess it's not really. Let's try mask by features. That's not going to do anything for us. Let's go back to cavity again. I think this is probably our best bet here. So let's go into masking and let's go ahead and grow it once and then sharpen it. Grow it, sharpen it, and see if that gets rid of our. Yeah, that got rid of our mask, our ghosting there a little bit. So let's go ahead and go in here. Yeah, there we go. And we can also turn this view mask off so we can see what we're doing in relationship to these colors. So I can see that white's way too crappy. Let's try. Nope, too saturated. There we go. Yeah, and this can take time, so just be aware of that. Don't get frustrated. Usually a plant like this can take anywhere from 3 to 4 hours just for this part of it. Then there's the second part of extracting the maps. So I'm going to just go through here and just add these in. I typically don't use the fill when I do this because the brush strokes add more variation to these. And we want variation as much as we can get. So I'll keep going. All right. So we still have a mask. We'll just clear that. And that is definitely getting to where we want it to be. Okay. Just bringing up the reference again, just taking a look. So yeah, definitely have some darker greens. So let's go ahead and grab our spotlight. Oh, you know what? Let's do something real quick before we go any further. Let's save. So just going to save that. Okay. And let's grab the spotlight. Turn that on and let's scale it down. Move it off to the side. Because now what we're going to do is hold down the C key, and that's not going to work. Let's see. There we go. So make sure that your spotlight, your little wheel is on, just hitting the V key, and then I'm going to hit the C key, and you can see that our color is updating over here. I'm just going to try to grab some of this darker green. I think that'll work. Let's turn that off. Do a large brush size, bring our RGB intensity way down. Switch this to color spray, and let's just start spraying some color on. And at first you're not gonna really recognize, you're not gonna see what you're doing, just because I've got this intensity down so low. Let's go ahead and turn off our lazy mouse. And make sure you have Z add off, by the way. Let's see what we get with just a normal spray. Oh, there we go. It was because the spotlight was on. That was the problem. So let's switch back to color spray. Lower our intensity down to 5 or 6. There we go. Now you can see our style of color is starting to change. So let's go ahead and do a darker green. It definitely seems to get a bit darker around the edges. So let's just darken those in. That looks good. And this definitely has some distinct streaking in it, so I'm going to try to get some of that in there. Just to imply it. Let's turn our color spray off. Really small brush, just tap in here. You can hold down Shift as well, just make sure you turn Z add off. Shift is like a blend. It'll blend between colors. And don't worry, like this is way too saturated, so I'll just go over here and I'll just paint back over it. Again, I'll keep saying this like a million times. Color variation is incredibly important with leaves and foliage in general. So then I'm just hitting the C key. I'm just picking up color off of our object to get more variation. Checking our reference, pull this intensity down and just really darken up some of this outer edge here. And we're starting to lose our little vein lines in here, so I'm gonna grab a color and really bring them out. we go. Oh, it's still too big. See if this works. There we go. Finally. So we're just kind of really putting a final touch on these just to make sure that they don't get lost in your color. Which happens as you start to paint color on this, you can start to lose these details. But if you see, if we would have put these in beforehand, we wouldn't have got that level of color variation that we're looking for. So I'm just going to hit a few of these. I'm not going to do all of them because I don't think it's really totally necessary. Just really needs to be light close to the stem. And this goes without saying, you definitely want to use a Cintiq or a graphics tablet for this. It's pretty much close to impossible to try to do this with a mouse, so don't torture yourself. And I'm kind of varying the pressure here, like I'm adding a lot and then taking it out and then adding a little bit back in. Again, variation, variation, variation. Probably going to hit a few of these that kind of went away. All right, that works. And I'm going to go ahead and put that center highlight back in gently as I possibly can. Looks like we got a little hole right there. So let's fix that. Do a little inflate. Clear our mask. There we go. So these are a bit too wide for me, so I'm going to go back with the pinch brush, and I'm just going to pinch them back in. It just bothers me. Let's go ahead and just pinch these together. All right, that is looking good. So I know in the center we have a pretty light area where the stem is. So let's switch back to our paintbrush. Make it pretty big, bring the intensity down. Let's just paint in some highlight here. I'm going to switch to freehand. And let's go ahead and turn our lazy mouse off too. I'm going to turn the Z intensity up just a bit. There we go. And now I'm just kind of knocking it back. Bringing it back. Everything feels a bit too light all over the place, so I'm just going to add in a little bit of a darker color in some of these spots here. And that works for me. So one thing to remember, we are going to be seeing these probably at about this distance, about there. So usually that's more than enough information. Specifically for these leaves, you probably need to do a little bit more as far as how to build these ridges up because they're pretty distinct. You could always go back in with your damn standard brush. And just add in some more. Because honestly, these probably need to be divided up another like 2 or 3 times. Yeah, that's looking better. So I'm just going to spend a minute to put these extra lines in here. And sometimes it's going to happen where you kind of have to go back and add in this detail. That's one of the best things about this method. Um, Using things like speed tree and stuff, sometimes you kind of lose the ability to really kind of go back and edit. I mean, obviously speed tree does a pretty good job of this stuff. But if you can't afford it, we can always do it in ZBrush. Yeah, see how that looks? That looks way better than this side. So I'm going to go ahead and continue to do that. I'm just literally adding veins just in between. So I'm just subdividing this by 2. Yeah, these are kind of crap. So let's use the move brush and just move these, straighten them up a bit. There we go. Oh, gotta change that brush back. There we go. Much better. So really the only thing we have left to do is we want to make sure, as you can see from a profile view, this is pretty flat. So I'm going to switch to my move brush and just move this around just enough that we can tell the difference in the normal map, that each leaf is a bit different. Um, it's a small, subtle thing, but it's really important. So the key thing here is don't try to put bends, don't try to do um, crazy deformation because you know that in Maya you're going to be doing the modeling of your actual geometry that's going to hold these textures. We're just generating a texture here. Let's go down there. So then you're literally just going to duplicate this. So let's just duplicate it again, or duplicate it for the first time, and we'll move it. For a leaf I'd probably do 4 of these. So let's just grab these guys and move them out. And you want to kind of figure your layout out for these as well in a square, but I don't really want to go through that. You'll see that in the next video where you have to have a square canvas. So I'm just going to go through this and hit Alt and click, and that's going to switch between our subtools. And I'm just going to vary the shape here a bit, just a little bit, not much. So again, Alt. You want to try to make sure none of the spots actually match up to the other leaves, if that makes any sense. So let's just go through, and I'm not going to go too crazy here. You're going to get the idea. It looks like we've got some Dynamesh problems down here. So again, let's just close these up. That works. Cool. And I kind of like the way that the inflate brush moved that center around, so I'm going to use that just a little bit on some of these center areas. Just adds a cool little ridge effect. And again, it's adding more variation as well in each of these. Cool. So next up, we'll just go through and I'll just start adding more color. We can move to more of a yellow if you want to maybe put some dead spots in here. Let's move back to our paintbrush. Make sure we have the right leaf selected. So we can have a couple that have some darker areas, maybe some lighter areas. Let's go ahead and make one that's definitely dying. So let's grab this yellow and desaturate it. Yeah, that saturated. Just creating some dead spots. And again, this is kind of all up to what you want to do. Just grab this color in here and darken it up. Just to add some spots where they might be dying. And in my reference, I really don't have any dead leaves, so I'm not going to go too crazy on the dead variant, but you get the idea. There we go. And that is that. So in the next part, I'll show you how to do the layout, and square up your canvas and get these exported and into Maya. Hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next lesson.